Hi. So in this video, we're going to be solving two-step equations. So here we're going to be solving the equation for the variable given, and then we're going to check our solutions to make sure that we're right. So in our first example, we have negative 2n plus 3 equals 9. And so for our first step, we're going to want to go ahead and get rid of that 3. So we're going to do the inverse of a plus 3, which is a minus 3, and that makes that 3 go away, which leaves us with negative 2n equals 6. And so now we're going to get rid of our negative 2, and so we're going to divide both sides by negative 2, because right now the negative 2 is being multiplied with the n. So dividing it helps that to go away, giving us n equals negative 3. And then we can check that simply by plugging it back into our equation and then checking to see, do we in fact get a 9? Let me just move that. All right, there we go. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in the negative 3 that we got right there. We're going to plug that in right there for our n value, so negative 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this math right here on this left-hand side, and we're going to see if that in fact gives us a 9. So we plug that into our calculator, or we can do that mentally, and we see that we are going to have a 9, which does in fact equal our 9, showing us that we do have the right answer. So n equals negative 3 is the correct answer. Let's take a look at our next one. So in our next problem, we have negative 21 equals 1/2 times c minus 11. So we're trying to get the c by itself. We're trying to get that variable all by itself. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get rid of our 11 first. And again, we do the inverse operation because that will zero that out. And so now we have a negative 10 equals 1/2 times c. Now there's a couple different ways that we can think about that 1/2, how to get rid of it. Because right now it's 1/2 times c, so we could divide both sides by 1/2. That's kind of hard to think about sometimes mentally. We could also, if we didn't want to divide by 1/2, we could multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2/1. Now, one way isn't necessarily better than the other. It's kind of what you like to do. What do you see that works best for you? If you're doing it mentally, then multiplying by the reciprocal generally will help you to have an easier time of doing the math. But if you're using a calculator, there's no reason why you couldn't just take the negative 10 and divide it by 1/2. Since we already have the reciprocal still written, we'll go ahead and we'll just follow with that for this one. So here, my 1 and my 1 will cancel out because one's in the numerator and one is in the denominator. And my 2's have the same thing, so they'll cancel out because 1/2 times 2 is 1. And so that will leave me with just 1 times c on the right-hand side, but we don't write down the 1. It's invisible. And then on the left-hand side, we have 2/1, or just 2 times negative 10, which is a negative 20. And so now we're ready to check that solution since we got negative 20 for our c value. So to check that, we are going to be plugging in negative 20 into the spot where our c goes. So this is where c belongs, and we're going to plug in negative 21. And then, just like we did before, we're going to work out this right-hand side of the equation and see what we get, and then compare it to that negative 21. So when I plug this in, I got a negative 21.5, and that doesn't match negative 21. So I want to go back and see what I did wrong. And I can see right away, and some of you might have caught it, that instead of plugging in negative 20 into the c spot, I plugged in negative 21. So we're going to go back, we're going to erase this piece right here, we're going to plug in the negative 20 into where our c goes, and now when we plug that in, we see that we're going to have a value of negative 21, and when we compare that we see that we get the right answer, and so we know that c equals negative 20 is correct. Now for this next problem, we're going to see something a little bit different because now we have two terms that have a variable in them. So what we're going to do first is we're going to combine those like terms. So negative 2 plus negative 10 is a negative 12. So we'll have negative 12x plus 12 equals 18. So now when we start to solve for x, we'll get rid of our plus 12 by subtracting it, leaving us with negative 12x equals 6. Then we'll divide both sides by negative 12 to get rid of that 12 because that leaves us with 1x, because remember, negative 12 divided by negative 12 is 1. So we have 1x left, and that's going to leave us with a negative 1/2 for an answer. And now we're ready to plug that in to check it. So let's see, let's go ahead and let's plug that in. So negative 2 times negative 1/2 minus 10 times negative 1/2 plus 12, and we're hoping that that's going to equal an 18. So let's go ahead, we're going to take our negative 1/2 value, and we're going to plug that in right there. So negative 1/2 and negative 1/2, and then just like we did before, we're going to work out this side and check with the other side. Now if you need to, you can push pause on the video so that you can try that out and see if you get the 18. Now when I plug that into my calculator, I get an 18. And when I check that, I'm like, hey, that's right. So I know that x equals negative 1/2 is our solution. So let's go ahead and move on to our next problem. This one's a little bit different because it has a decimal. Does that make it any harder? Nope, it doesn't. We're still trying to get the x by itself. So we're going to start by getting rid of the 13. So we're going to add 13 to both sides. And that's the inverse operation, which zeroes out our 13. So that leaves us with 2.5x equals 15. Then we're going to divide both sides by 2.5. So that's the inverse operation, and 2.5 divided by 2.5 is 1. So we can just write down x equals. Then when we plug in 15 divided by 2.5 into our calculator, we get a 6. And now we're ready to check our answer. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our 6 and plug it in and see if we get the right answer. All right, so I'll give us a little bit more room here. So I'm going to work out this side right here, and that gives me a value of 2. And when I check it, it matches, and so x equals 6 is my answer. All right, so let's go on to our last one. And if you want to, you could push pause and try it yourself and then see if you get it right. But we're going to go ahead and move forward. So here we see, again, that we have, just like in letter C up on top, we have two terms that have our variable x. And so we're going to need to combine those. So 9 plus negative 6 is going to be 3. And so we have negative 12 equals 3x plus 15. And now we're just down to kind of a standard two-step, and we're going to subtract our 15 from both sides so we can get rid of the 15 using that inverse operation. And that's going to give us a negative 27 equals 3x. Then we should be dividing by 3 to both sides. And remember that 3 divided by 3 is a 1. So we have that inverse operation. So we have just the 1x. And then negative 27 divided by 3 is negative 9. And all we need to do now is to check that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug it in. And again, we're plugging in our negative 9. Okay? And so now we're going to work out this right-hand side and see what we get. So when I plug in 9 times negative 9 minus 6 times negative 9 plus 15 into the calculator, I get a negative 12. And so when I check that against what it's supposed to equal, I see that that's correct. That we got matching answers, which means x equals negative 9 is the correct solution. So that's how you can solve two-step equations and equations that have more than one term with the same variable. It also kind of shows you why checking your solution is so important. Remember on letter B where we accidentally put in the wrong number? It helps us to make sure we're circling the right answer and getting our right answer.